Welcome to the Zandbergen Report, where wealth strategies and pop culture collide, featuring your distinguished host and certified financial planner, Bart Zandbergen.
Welcome to our show of Dream Chasers and Wealth Makers. We are thrilled to be back in the studio today with a new episode of the Zandbergen Report. I'm proud to bring in the movers, shakers, and difference makers who are passionate about sharing what they have learned and what you need to know today. And glad to be back in the studio again this week with Melissa Océan of Divorce Strategies Group. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's a long time in the making.
Yes. We've been talking about this for a while.
For a long time. So we've got a subject that I don't know if anyone's going to consider exciting, but it is certainly important for the people that we serve. Let's first describe what it is you do.
Yeah, so I'm a divorce financial analyst, and we'll abbreviate that for this purposes of a CDFA. And in addition, I'm a master analyst in financial forensics. And what happened is there was probably 20 years ago, individuals would come to me in my investment firm and they would want to know like what I could do to help them with their divorce proceeds. And what I found was that either they hadn't got enough support, in alimony to support their lifestyle afterwards, or maybe the assets they had gotten probably weren't the best assets for them to manage post-divorce or have the proper cost basis.
Right.
So I just decided it was time for me to get certified in that and maybe get involved during the process of the divorce. Because as you know, you can do it after the divorce and help them and assist, or you can choose to be engaged during that process. And I really felt like I could add value to clients if I was able to help do that during the divorce. So got certified to do that.
So just for the listeners, many of them know that I have the same certification.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've taken it and really specialized and focused, and I use it as needed.
Yes.
But I think you hit on a really valuable point is one asset is not the same as another asset.
Right.
So a house versus an IRA versus a trust account, they are not equal. If they're each have a market value of $1 million, doesn't make them equal. You and I know, right?
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
There's tax consequences. There is ownership consequences. So liquidity consequences. So I think that all needs to be factored in.
And sometimes it's deciding what asset is best for you to manage. For example, if someone has a spouse that's an individual business owner, he or she may not want to be involved in that business afterwards, because then you become a minority owner and you really don't have any say in the day-to-day operations. And there's a lot of ways, you know, and I know, to funnel money out for different things that will make the business less profitable. So I don't normally advise that. And it's probably a good time to just mention that normally I'm working alongside of a business valuator as well. So that's really important, I think, to define. I'm not a business valuator.
Sure.
But what I am helping to do, and probably you know this even in your experience, in your practice, is that some of this is just being able to give them a vision and understanding of all the assets of what they do have, whether it's stock options and how that's going to be treated, post-divorce. But understanding and really listing out the assets is a vital role I believe we play as advisors to help them. This is what the list is, because a lot of times somebody's used to spending that money, maybe the other one's out earning it all day, but there's not necessarily those conversations that have been had about an overall net worth statement. And I really think that's important, because when you get educated, that's empowerment. And that's the whole goal here, is just to be able to make educated decisions.
Oh, of course. And I think in every couple, you've probably come across it too. There is, in our world, the terminology is there's the financial spouse.
Yes.
And then there's a non-financial spouse.
Yes.
It's very not very frequently, lost my words, where both spouses are like 100% in the finance, budgeting together. It's just, for whatever reason, doesn't happen.
Yeah, and for me, I've termed that non-moneyed spouse, meaning that they're not really the one handling the day-to-day finances or the overall assets. So I'm primarily hired by, and I'm working with that non-moneyed spouse that really needs that education to make informative decisions for them and for their children going forward.
Right. Yeah. And there's things, and we'll get into that. I think that's probably I think the financial stuff is very important on what we do, but the non-financial and working with these spouses is very important as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of emotions that we manage throughout the day as well, I guess.
How about a little about your story? What got you into what you're doing and where you are today?
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, I've been in the financial industry and been an advisor for over 30 years now, and that was just a fluke. I was selling cellular phones, and next thing I know, someone said, "Hey, you would be really great at this. You should try this." And I thought, "Oh, here we go." But I found I was very passionate about helping people to understand, and I say a lot to especially my women clients that have never had to really work or be on their own. I just remember saying, like, I didn't even know I was coming home and it was like, hey, I might get this job at the time it was prudential-based securities. I'm like, I don't even know what securities means. And so I say to my clients, like, if I can learn what the difference is between a stock and bond, so can you.
Yeah.
But it's just been a series of years of working through that, and then I really refined it in this divorce practice, and that is primarily my passion, is to really help individuals go through transition. And a lot of times it's women in transition, whether it's through death or divorce. We really don't always take the time to learn about the finances until we're in a position where we have to. And so for me, I kind of got thrown into this myself because I was at an age where I was supporting myself and on my own, and then I found myself probably it'll be 9 years in July in the situation of being basically my own client.
Yeah, that's right.
Going through my own divorce.
Yeah.
So, and I went through that experience of being a single mom, which I hadn't done because I had come out of a 25-year marriage, and so it's really been. It's something I've been able to relate to my clients on a different level than I did before. And I understand the fear that surrounds that. And it really, truly doesn't matter what your net worth is. I think there's always that concern of whether you're going to be okay. And it brings about a lot of questions. And so for me, I've really appreciated that I've been able to learn from my clients and be able to help them as well.
Yeah.
But it's been a journey.
As I'm talking about that, I'm thinking about journey, and there's nothing better than experience to learn from.
It's a lesson.
Because I've been through the same experience that you have, and that have launched little part of my practice and my certification. And I think the experience helps with the education and helps to translate and communicate and identify with and have empathy for.
I was just going to say I'm very empathic, and I have a lot of people in my practice that are as well when they come in to see me. And, so feeling everyone else's pain and going through that myself, it's made it probably even a deeper purpose for me. Yeah. And I realized it doesn't just stop at divorce. I've had clients with just randomly have just lost their spouses, and just health reasons, something's happened. And so it's getting through that trauma and realizing that this isn't the end. It's just the beginning.
Right.
And that's been really powerful. Honestly, for me, I practice in the Vegas market, but I also have a space in Santa Barbara. But it's allowed me to do things that I never would have done before if I was still married, like riding horses, and enjoying the things I love to enjoy.
Yeah.
And probably having vehicles and things I wouldn't have had before if I had stayed in a marriage. But so there is other things, and girl trips and wonderful things that are just life's blessings that come along that you don't really realize are there until you've gone through this change and have time that opens up for you to take care of yourself. So,
we can't always plan our future, or there's some adage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you make plans and then life laughs at you, or something along those lines.
Exactly. Yes.
Let's speak for a minute of CDFA versus attorney. You probably had the same sort of questions that I've had from clients. That some of them tend to be more legal, and so I'll let you describe the difference between the two and when one should come in.
Yeah, I really think looking at understanding that an attorney is hired to be your advocator, and that doesn't always mean that they're going to tell you what you want to hear. I think as an individual that works in the finance, I'm a lot more practical to say, well, that's really great. You might want that, but that doesn't really, this is how this is going to feel to you. Let's talk about how you're going to feel post-divorce if you take this asset on. And do you really want to be tied to this experience? So I think knowing that for us as advisors, as a CDFA, I'm really there to work off of the documents that I receive, the source documents. I'm there to look at them. They tell a story. I love to tell that story.
Yeah.
I can follow things through, and we've had some interesting conversations over waste, where husband's out buying purses, shoes, whatever, trips with a new girlfriend, and that's all over her Instagram account. So there's little things like that happen, right?
Yeah.
But the attorney can't necessarily do anything about that. We there as a CDFA, I can start to look at credit cards, and I can start to analyze that for the waste, and then I can also kind of hold the hand of the client and just say, look, let me do this. You don't need to see it. We'll talk about the number in the end, and we'll decide how we want to proceed forward with that. But I think it's really important to differentiate the two, because an attorney can really focus on the legal aspects of the case and drive that forward, whether it's filing motions, whether it's for temporary support, whether it's just making sure that there's a JPI in place, a joint preliminary injunction, so that no one is spending money that's not without permission from both parties. Even filing tax returns. This is a big season, right, where you're signing tax returns and you need to have people review. But I think having an attorney driving forward the legal process while we're looking at the financial and organizing the financial data, it's so much more cost efficient, and it's really helpful to the attorney, because I believe we really make them shine, because we're able to bring all these numbers in a condensed version to them. And I can't tell you how many attorneys have said, look, I went to law school because I never wanted to do anything in the finance industry and numbers.
Right, exactly.
So, it's a good good
right?
good combination, for sure.
So I know it comes up sometime, who do I hire first? Do I hire an attorney first, or engage an attorney? Do I engage a CDFA? How do you what do you usually recommend?
Well, I certainly get a lot of clients that come from attorneys that are referring to me because they want to retain me first. But I actually think if you can, in your own market, and we're not limited really to markets either, but if you want to do that, I think looking for a CDFA, and I think it's just institutecdfa.org or something. But if you can find who that person is in your community, I think having a conversation with them, most of us have really big hearts if we're willing to listen to this kind of stuff all day and go through these and be in the trenches. I think we have a really good handle on the attorneys and the personalities. And if we get to know you, we can say, this guy's going to be more detailed. This is going to be better for you, but this person's going to be a little hands off, and you might want it to be different than that. I feel like I have a really good idea of who's going to match up with and sometimes getting to that person first really makes a difference in how the case goes. It's not this constant, well, I didn't hear from him, I did this or that. When you can align a client with an attorney, I think that's a win for everybody.
Right.
So my preference would be is you reach out to us first, because we can help you with that. And then also you have to be careful, because we also are there to help educate you. Like, don't go out in conflict every attorney out in town that's the best attorney, because inside the community, in our family law community, we know which attorney is going to be a great mediator for our case. So we wouldn't want you to conflict that person out, because we might want him to mediate both sides instead of going to court. So little reasons like that.
I know it's a common thing to go out and conflict the attorneys, but there's reasons not to.
There is. And I think just talking to a CDFA, you can just be educated. Again, start learning how to empower yourself. And I think part of that is just, again, speak to somebody and talk to a CDFA and then talk to an attorney. I mean, that's the preference for those reasons.
So pre-divorce, so someone engages you. What is your process with them?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm a quarterback in the team. And what I like to do, it's very similar to, I'm also a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. And it's like taking you through that process. The first thing is, what is my scope of work? I want to talk to that attorney, and I want to see what is in his mind of what he wants me to do. And for example, I'm hired oftentimes to do a lifestyle analysis. So I'm literally going to go back, and it'll generally take a year, but the attorney may want 2 or 3 years. Especially with COVID, it's thrown a lot of things off, right? Because that wasn't a normal year for spending. Yeah. And so for me, I like to find out what my scope of work is going to be, what time period are we going to be doing analysis on for the expenses, and at the same time, I'm going to be gathering documents for all of the assets and the liabilities and really putting in a strong net worth or balance sheet together. In doing that, I'm working with that client to educate them along the way. But so having that scope of work defined, gathering the documents, I'm going to then do the analysis. I like to do my lifestyle analysis with the client and work with them over a series of appointments because, frankly, nobody can do more than 2 hours at a time at this. I mean, even we start to go enough
that's
already.
Even a long time.
Well, because you really need to go through and see what is expenses for the children and what is expenses for the mother or the father, so that we're not attributing additional expenses for support for that. So when we go through that process, it's breaking that down so we can then meet with the attorney, and I believe that becomes a lot more cost efficient because for most cases, we're going to be able to look at the financial things and we organize it, we put it in Dropbox, then we send that so that the attorney has access to it. They can gather what they need out to because they're going to have requirements with the court systems for discovery. It's just really us helping to organize the case, and then we go through that, and eventually we'll end up in some kind of negotiations, whether it's mediation. We try not to. I've only had a couple cases have to go to court because I really take the stance at the early part. If we prepare like we're going to trial, then we won't have to.
Yeah.
And so that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you ever called as a witness or expert witness?
I have, and I've had to do it a couple different times. I get subpoenaed all the time, and that's usually because we're in that process of discovery, and I may have to get deposed, and that's happened as well. But for the most part, we try to schedule some time where we can just get around the table and talk about what is a better settlement and how can we do that without going to court and having a expense that's going to be tied to that.
Yeah.
Save that for the community.
Sure. And then you're kind of the process post-divorce. Do you kind of change hats into your CFP, or is there still CDFA work that you're doing at post?
Yeah, so this is really important to me not to muddy those waters because as an expert, I really don't give clients advice on post-divorce investing or anything specific. I can talk in broad terms, and I educate them on withdrawal rates and what I feel is a comfortable withdrawal rate, 4 to 5%, as you know, on a portfolio to make it sustainable for 30 years. And I'm really looking for that commitment to that from them post-divorce. So if we've done the lifestyle analysis, we've detailed out the expenses, I'm at a point post-divorce where I want a commitment of you're going to work with me, then we're going to adhere to a spending policy. Now, if there's enough assets and that doesn't come into play, fine. But for most people, you really do still need to have that. And then it really works going into implementation phase. How are we going to manage this money most conservatively based on your spending policy? And then what amount of risk do we have to take in a portfolio? So all that starts to play in, but it's absolutely still a team afterwards even as well.
I know that you and I both have spent some time in more behavioral finance, and it's beyond the money. It's the feelings and so forth. Talk to me a bit about that, about how you're working with your clients in that regard. Yeah.
So there's always that emotional attachment, right, to the family home especially
always
for a woman. Oh my gosh, we've put our whole life into this.
Yes.
It's been our career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, we do talk a lot about, and if I see a client that's really spending an enormous amount on clothing or travel or trips, and it's just a little out of line from what was normally being done, I want to go deeper. I want to sit her down and I want to sit face to face and I want to talk about why.
Yeah.
What is this replacing for you? What hole do you have in your heart that you're trying to fill with this retail therapy? Because while it's okay right now, it's not going to be sustainable. Yeah. And so we talk about why, what is going on and what could we do differently with that? What are you missing that, maybe you could start to think about what really does fill me in life? And is it really that short-term, fix from going out and buying that new filler? But what is it really about? And what do you really want life to look like? And how can you create your future of your best life? And what does that start to look like versus the way you've lived? Because sometimes in a marriage, we're numbing ourselves for the lack of love or pain or whatever, just unhappy.
Yeah. Right.
And now we're after that. And that's, to me, where that behavioral part comes in.
Yeah.
We've got to really have those conversations.
Like visualizing your best life. Like, what does that look like? What is the next I know it's cliche, in the next 5, 10, 20 years look like? What's
And
your...
isn't that really hard when you were getting divorced? Did you feel like 5 years, if you asked me what I want, I feel like, can we just figure out like how I can be in the next 5 days? Because I
5
can't
hours.
think past, right? Like I just want to get the kids fed and get everybody to bed and collapse, right? So I think it's hard initially. The frontal lobe part of the brain shuts down during divorce, and there's a lot of skills that we normally would have, we don't. So I think you have to at least be 6 months out to start getting real about longer term planning. But I think as we think about what we want that to look like, I think it starts with waking up in the morning and just saying, what do I want to do for me today? And I know for me, I did that for weeks. I didn't even know, because I was so used to taking care of everybody else. I really didn't have an understanding. And, that's where we get into loving ourselves, not needing to be having everything externally, and how we start to fulfill our own lives and our own souls so that we're not constantly seeking that outside of ourselves.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
and that doesn't happen overnight.
It's a process. I'm still in it.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's ever going to end. Sometimes you have to just pivot.
That's right.
And I'm learning that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, everyone loves a good story. So do you have a good, breakup crazy story?
I just had something that was just really funny to me. I had this woman, and she was just, her husband had cheated on her, and she was just had it. And she had a really great sense of humor. And I just remember her coming in one day, and she said to me, I did it. And I said, what did you do? And she says, I just did it. She says, I'm still laughing about it. And I said, okay, well, what did you do? And she said, well, how he's always worried about his hair falling out. She said, I replaced his shampoo with Nair. She said, so every time he shampoos, she's like, it's going to just keep coming out. And I thought, that was like, it's so funny to me. Women are like, this is the way we're going to give back, right? It's going to be the thing you love the most, your hair. No, speaking to you.
Yeah, you're talking to the wrong guy.
Your face is like, wow, that would be the worst thing ever.
Worst thing.
It was really funny. But yeah. And,
she can't go to jail for that or anything, right?
No,
That's
nothing. It's so, and I just sat and laughed with her, and I said, all right, I got it. But she felt so much lighter because of it. How was I going to condemn her for it? It was just really funny. She's like, yeah, he'll be complaining about his hair falling out for a while now because I changed out his shampoo.
So what's both funny and painful about that is in junior high, when I was in the band, and hair was very important to me back then. And we did a road trip, and there was a rumor, like on the buses, that they were going to do that in my shampoo. I didn't wash my hair for the whole time I was gone, just in case.
And now you travel with dry shampoo, right?
I bring my own stuff all the time. It never leaves my side.
Isn't it funny though? I thought that was
goodness.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyways.
I don't know if I can get past that story. Let me go. Let's move on. So what are some things that you do for yourself, like to grow, like spiritually, mentally, because you've been through that same quote unquote trauma, and you are now supporting yourself and your child. So what do you do?
There was, I felt like after my divorce, it was time for me to quiet my own mind. And that was scary, right? Because now for the first time, I had to really slow down and had to really go inside and think about what I wanted out of life. And I found a place called the Monroe Institute, and they had meditation retreats at the time in Montecito in Santa Barbara, and I would go for a week at a time. And that was life-changing for me. And I met a lot of friends there that I still have. And I just found that anything that I can do that's going to nurture and fill me up again, because, I think after being married for 25 years, you feel really depleted with whether it's children, husbands, businesses. So that was something that I started to do. I also have discovered my love for horses again. And I have this sweet horse, Gucci, that was Gus when he came to me. But I said I can't ride, and I said I can't ride a Gus, but I can ride a Gucci. And he rose to the occasion. Yeah. So that's been really special for me,
Yeah.
you know. And then what I've found is that when you do the things you love, I was fortunate enough to go on a girls' trip to Kona last weekend, and we rode horses in the mountains of the Big Island,
Wow.
and I have never done that. And the tall grasses with no paths, and
Yeah.
it was very similar to life, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have to stay on that beaten path, and I could travel around and see the ocean and the grass, and so I think that when we follow our heart and our own passions, we are then around other people that have similar ones, and I think that just really enriches life. I think that we as women, in my opinion, bring the richness to life. So I think it's important for us to find our own richness so that we can share that with our children, our young adults, and empower and encourage them to do the same.
Yeah,
So,
that's fantastic. Wow.
yeah.
What would you say, this is always my final thought question, what would you say is your ultimate lesson learned as your time as a financial advisor / CDFA?
Yeah, I feel like transition, divorce, they don't define you, they just refine you. And I think that's really important. It's not the end. So being divorced, losing a spouse, that doesn't define you as a person. It just refines you. You get to find more of yourself as you go through that journey. And I say to people all the time, you don't realize it, but you've just been given the most beautiful gift in your life, and I can't wait to watch you unwrap it. Yeah, because
it doesn't feel like it at the moment.
It doesn't feel like it, right? But as they unwrap it, I see them, and I see the transition and the metamorphosis of who they become 2-3 years out. So just it doesn't define you. Don't let it define you.
Yeah.
Let that refine you as it's going to, and become that person that you're always meant to be.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm going to take that line.
All good. You can. Spread the word.
Spread the love.
Spread the love.
How can people reach you?
I'm practicing in the Las Vegas office, so it's Divorce Strategies Group, and it's just www.melissaa.net is my website, and my phone number is 702-851-5858.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming into the studio, making the long trip from Vegas. And thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Share the time with you. Thank you.
And thanks for everyone who has tuned in. We look forward to being back in studio next week. Cheers.
Tune in next week for the latest edition of the Zandbergen Report, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Catch up on our recent shows by visiting podcast.bartzandbergen.com. The Zandbergen Report is also available on iTunes, iHeartRadio and Spotify. Interested in being a featured guest on our show, or have a question you'd like to hear us answer? Email podcast@bartzandbergen.com. The contents of this podcast episode do not constitute an offer of securities or a solicitation of an offer to buy securities, and may not be relied upon in making an investment decision related to any investment offering Access Wealth Management LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Access does not warrant the accuracy or completeness of the information contained herein. Opinions are our current opinions and are subject to change without notice. Prices, quotes, rates are subject to change without notice. Generally, investments are not FDIC insured, not bank guaranteed, and may lose value.